Well, hi everyone, Sean Humphreys here. Welcome to All Things Retirement. Well, in this installment, we're going to talk about how to make 2022 absolutely amazing. And I'll define what I mean by amazing in a second, but it's a good time to kind of cover this topic. You know, we've come through the Christmas holidays, holiday season, and we get into January, we're thinking about New Year's resolutions at the beginning of the year, but how's that working out for you? So if you're not making the progress you want, but you're looking for a way of trying to make this a great year, I'm going to talk about a strategy that is going to help you to experience more happiness, more emotional calm, and a greater level of engagement in your world, which will cultivate a very important trait that will contribute to your emotional calm and wellness. So I think you'll enjoy this particular video. Now, we're all about retirement on this channel, and you might be wondering why I'm talking about experiencing emotional well-being in the context of retirement income planning. Well, that's because retirement is not just about finances. It is about, you know, accumulation of assets, building up portfolio value, transition strategies to retirement, and being successfully retired, for sure. But there's other aspects. There's relational health, there's emotional, psychological health, obviously financial health, and relational health. And we'll talk about various aspects in our videos. Now, if you're new to our channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We're posting content all the time on various aspects of retirement. And so if you don't want to miss future installments, make sure you hit subscribe. Now, what I want to do is talk about a very important psychological trait that will contribute to your emotional health, well-being, and energy. And that's fostering this idea of personal agency. So what's personal agency? Personal agency is effectively having the belief and the outcome where you can make a difference in your life through your personal action and activities. You know, the polar opposite of that is, you know, you're cynical, you don't think you can have an impact, you can't change the circumstances that you're in, and it just kind of grinds you into inertia where you're not initiating change. But people that are healthy over time have the intrinsic belief, the internal belief, that they have personal agency so that they can impact their world through the actions that they initiate in the world that they're living in. And when you look at various studies around retirement and aging, that's one of the most important traits to foster, is that fundamental belief that you're not a victim, that you're not a victim of circumstance, that no matter what is happening in your world, that you can seize your own personal agency and have impact. So it's really, really critical to foster that. Now, there's another trait that sits beside that, and that's the idea of nurturing intrinsic motivations. So those motivations that come from within and create activity and engagement in your world. So some motivations are imposed on us or come from the outside, and we take those ideas and then we act on them. And so when you're working for a living, maybe that's your boss or employer is creating motivations for you by using a stick or a carrot. But intrinsic motivations are internally driven, and they drive you in your real world to make decisions, to take actions, to try to accomplish goals. So intrinsic motivation might be, I'd like to get to a healthy weight, I want to look better, I want to feel better about myself, and I want to do the necessary things to achieve those goals, and it's coming from within. Now, that same goal could come from your physician, doctor, or spouse, but it's more powerful if it comes from you. And so in that moment where you realize and you're motivated to go, you know what, I need to make a change, that's intrinsic motivation. So really, really key trait to foster. Now, you want to begin fostering these traits. We'll talk about a step-by-step process for doing this day to day, but you want to foster these traits because they can be greatly diminished if you allow your life to kind of just transition into retirement and to be retired. And one of the reasons for that is when we're raising our families and working for a living and pursuing our careers or goals, we have personal agency in spades. We're influencing our world constantly. And we're doing that in our professional lives, in our personal lives, in our volunteer work, and, you know, dealing with our kids and our families. But as we get older and as we disengage from some of those activities, we have to be really mindful that we may have to replace some of those traditional activities we're involved in with new activities that will foster personal agency and intrinsic motivations. So again, that action in the world, those intrinsic motivations, that personal agency does lead to greater happiness, greater sense of fulfillment, more energy and engagement, and that's critical to foster a long, happy, and healthy life. Okay, so we're going to talk about some concrete action steps you can take. Okay, so this little chart that I put together is just got level of engagement on the chart in terms of the left-hand side of the chart, and then the horizontal along the bottom is your age. And for many people, if they're not careful, their level of engagement and motivation begins to diminish quite quickly. So again, I mentioned previously, if you end up disengaging from the activities that used to provide a level of engagement and agency, then you begin to not work those muscles as much, and it can dissipate, and that can lead to less happiness and satisfaction and fulfillment. What you want to do is you want to keep that level of engagement higher all the way through your retirement years, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit of an exercise to cultivate that. Now, the other really interesting thing, and I'll have in the show notes a link to a couple of the studies, is that a little bit of stress is good for you. So when you're full on, again, raising your families, pursuing professional goals, all those kinds of things, it can get pretty stressful. And I find that when clients transition into retirement, it's not uncommon. They'll say, listen, I didn't realize how much stress I was under. In fact, my first 6 months after retirement, I was doing nothing but sleeping. Okay, and that's natural. But once you get through that phase, you better have a plan of engagement and personal agency if you want to keep that happiness quotient going for you. There's something about pursuing aspirational goals and important things in our life that keeps that happy quotient going. One of the things that keeps you going for those goals and trying to have agency in your life is a little bit of stress. So putting yourself in situations where you're accountable, you have to follow up with things, you're trying to accomplish things, you're working with other people, it's really good to have a little bit of stress. If you have no stress in your life, that's actually not healthy. So you don't want to have too much stress, you don't want to have no stress, you just want to have the right amount of stress, right? So it's trying to strike that balance, and only you can determine that. But do not make the assumption that having no stress is a healthy state. It's not, okay? So let's kind of walk through a bit of an exercise to see how we can actually begin implementing this idea. Now, the first thing that I would recommend you do is use the previous year as an opportunity to just reflect. So reflect on what happened, reflect on what went well, reflect on what went poorly, reflect on what you can learn from those experiences, and what you would do differently. So reflection areas could be your health, could be your diet, it could be your exercise regime, strength, flexibility, cardio. In the area of relationships, it could be your children, your partner, your spouse, your grandchildren, your friendships, how are those going? Or are you mentoring someone, so what's happening in that area? What about hobbies and various activities? Vocation, are you still consulting? Employment, contract work, and then you've got things like volunteer work, and then finances, so your cash flow, tax, investing, and estate planning. So again, we'll have a little bit of a worksheet that you can grab hold of. If you go to the show notes and click the link for the worksheet, you can just grab hold of that. But basically, you can write down those topic areas. So again, we've got our finances, volunteerism, vocation, hobbies, relationships, and health as an example. Okay, now reflect on each of those areas and just reflect on how they went. And another way of looking at that reflection exercise is something called the life wheel. I really like the life wheel, where you draw a picture, a circle of each of the functional areas. And if you're hitting it out of the park in terms of relationships, for example, it might be a 10, maybe finances is a 3. And so at the middle of the circle, that's kind of the 1 or 0. And then you draw a line out from the center point to, whether you're a 2 or a 3 or a 10, which is the outer edge of that circle. And it's a good visual representation of how well-rounded your life is. And often when people go through this exercise, they find that it's not very well-rounded. And if that wheel had to start turning, it would be a very uneven turn, and they wouldn't make a lot of progress, right? It's a good metaphor. So go through that exercise, and that's going to give you the ability to just kind of reflect pretty quickly on different areas you may want to focus in on for this next year, and begin using personal agency, the belief that you can have an impact, and that intrinsic motivation. Reflect on why it's important and why you want to make those changes. So the first thing is reflect on each of those areas. How are you doing? and what areas you want to focus on to begin making some improvements. Now, another aspect of this reflection exercise is a lot of psychologists feel that the way you can kind of drive yourself to have intrinsic motivation is to use either pain or pleasure to get you motivated. Actually, pleasure is not as powerful. It's actually pain or regret are far more powerful motivations. And so the way you want to leverage off that is those areas where you're a little bit lopsided in that wheel of life. Then what you can do is go, that's an area I want to work on. Reflect on what the impact to your life would be if you didn't work on it, so the negatives, and reflect on what you want it to look like, the positives, and use the negative impact and the positive impact to create some internal motivations to take action. Write out a little bit of a narrative, write a couple of short paragraphs in each of those areas, and review them on a regular basis to kind of create that internal motivation and then personal agency to act to make improvements in those areas. Okay, now you've gone through and reflected on the past year and some basic areas of your life, and the next step is to begin building a bit of an action plan. And so the only way you're going to accomplish change is, first of all, you can have this goal, and goals are really important, but goals are basically, it's kind of the horizon. It's looking into the future and what you're trying to shoot for. Now, very rarely when we start an action plan towards our goals do we achieve the goal exactly the way we envision it. But it's not a waste of time. We're making progress. So what you see happen with many people is the act of pursuing goals will make their life better. It may not be exactly the way they initially envisioned it, but a year later when they look back at the past year, they realize they made very significant progress. So use your future goals or vision as motivation, but don't make that the be-all and end-all. When you get to the end of the year, or the end of the month, or the end of the quarter, look back and go, you know what, I may not have fully achieved some of those objectives, but I've definitely made some great progress over the next few months. And that will create great encouragement for you to begin moving forward again and taking those actions. So the goals are to try to create motivation. Your action plans and your activities are the most important things. So what you need to do is begin to identify specific activities that you do on a regular basis that if you just do those, they'll naturally move you in the direction of your goals. It could be daily, it could be weekly, it could be monthly, quarterly, but you need to start writing down what specific activities do you want to achieve or do so you can achieve your goals. Okay, so step one, what specific results do you want to see over this next year? And it might be just in one area or several areas. So again, health, relationships, finances, hobbies, vocation. What are the specific goals? Now, step two is you want to make sure you create what's often called SMART goals. So SMART stands for specific. They need to be, so the more specific your goal, the better. Measurable, so you can measure out your progress. Attainable, so you don't want them to be so aggressive that you have no hope of achieving them. You want them to stretch you a little bit, but you want them to be attainable if you put the effort in. You want them to be, again, realistic, not too crazy. And you want them to be time-bound. You want to set a timeline in terms of when you want to accomplish the goal. So be as specific as possible. So the next thing you want to do is you want to write those goals down. So step three. Step four, create an action plan. Right, so the specific actions you need to take. Again, number five, step five, create the timeline. And then step six, start taking action, which in many ways is the most difficult thing to do. And that's why the reflection exercise, where you take a look at each of the areas that you want to attack, reflect on what would happen if you didn't make progress in this area, what would happen if you did, use that vision to create energy in the accomplishment of your goals. And then step number 7 is reevaluate and assess your progress over time. Anyway, just a little bit of an update for you. I think it's really important, no matter what age you are, whether you're still full on in your career or you're transitioning to retirement, you never want to lose the practice and the art and the discipline of having goals, setting up action plans, using your personal agency to make a difference in your world, and building intrinsic motivations that come from you, your heart, and your purpose, and not everything's being driven by the people and external events in your world. Again, if you're not subscribed to our channel, make sure you do that if you don't want to miss future content. If you like the video, make sure you click the like icon. And we also have some resources that you can take a look at, some resources on retirement income planning, and a resource that talks about our retirement income plans, how you can get one. So if one of your goals is to get clear on your finances, particularly around retirement income planning, then we've got some great resources that will help you in that journey. If you want to start a conversation, there's a link to our website to get an email to our office. Anyway, all the best for the year and your goals. You take care. Bye-bye.